On today's Transport Evolved, the UK Leafs are delivered, but then some are delayed. An $845,000 Porsche electric, hybrid plug-in electric vehicle. Gas tax for EVs, or tax for EVs in lieu of gas tax, is it coming? AT&T and Ford get together. Are we going to lose our signal to our smart electric cars? There's reports of Leaf price gouging, Volt price gouging, driving people to buy Hondas instead. Better Place is too expensive, and lots more. Coming up next on Transport Evolved. Transport Evolved is sponsored by Owning an Electric Car. Everything you need to know about owning an electric car. Head to www.owningelectriccar.com, and also sponsored by audiblepodcast.com. To claim your free audiobook from a selection of over 85 growing titles, 85,000 growing titles for your iPod or MP3 player, head to www.audiblepodcast.com/Transport Evolved. It's time to evolve your transport. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 43 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Thursday, 24th of March, 2011. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and I am your usual weekly host into the world of green transport, with a emphasis on green plug-in vehicles, electric vehicles, and clean technologies. And without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests for today's show. First up, I would like to welcome somebody who's never been on the show before. He's actually a colleague of mine in my day job, I guess. Marty Paget, who's senior editor at High Gear Media. Welcome to the show, Marty. How are you today?
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're kind of director of editorial content, right?
Yes. We have 40, 50 websites that we cover the ground with: electric cars, green cars, and some of the ones that aren't so green. And all of them need a steady hand during the day. So that's me.
Yeah. And you are also happen to be a Leaf on the Leaf reservation list, don't you?
I'm a Leaf customer at this point. We're supposedly delayed until late summer. I live in Georgia in the U.S., so it's a matter of being in the second group of states that will get Leaf deliveries. And the timeline's gotten a little squishy, but still looking at late summer as a target.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Also joining me today for the third week in a row, although he is wearing different clothes, so I know that he has changed, had a bath, and it's actually very fetching. I don't know what you call that. It's kind of a waistcoat stroke. It's very British. Welcome to the show, Michael Thwaite. How are you today?
Hi, Nikki. How are you this week?
I'm good. I've given up on the whatever it was, the description of your top. Not that it's
this. Yeah, this is I've got to look a bit trendy, I guess.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thanks.
So we've had a very busy week in the world of green transport this week. But before we get going, if you want to take part in the show, you should by now know what to do. You need to point your browser at www.transportevolved.com/live. You'll see that link underneath me in the chat window there, and you can actually take part in the show. You can interact with the guests, you can interact with the other viewers, and you can even give us a show notes or an idea for a topic right now, and it will come into our show notes live in the show. So we might discuss it by the end of the show. And to do that, you need to go to scribbit.com/blogs/Transport Evolved. And as I say, welcome to everyone in the chat room today. We've got lots of folks in there, lots of chat going on. So let us start with the news of the week. Now, Marty, what would you say has been your number one green car story this week?
Actually, we have a story that just came out a few hours ago. John Volker, who edits the Green Car Report site, is one of the first people to drive the Buick LaCrosse e-Assist, which is basically the mildly revamped versions of GM's mild hybrid system. It's start-stop technology, battery brake regen, and they're claiming 37 miles per gallon US on the EPA's highway cycle. So it's a couple of miles per gallon improvement on the standard LaCrosse, which is kind of a little bit larger than mid-size car by our standards.
Now, Marty, for those who don't know, maybe you could go ahead and explain just what a mild hybrid is, because I know that some of our viewers might not know that terminology. We're all car geeks, but not everyone is.
Well, by our definition, a mild hybrid system only augments the power of the gasoline engine. It doesn't substitute for it, and it cannot run in EV mode alone. This case, I forget the kilowatt hour size of the battery pack. John just published the story a couple of hours ago, and I've read it once. But GM's system used to be called BAS. I think it's belt assisted system.
Right.
And it was used in the Malibu hybrid, very short run in production. There was a Saturn Aura hybrid that also shared the same system, and a version of the first Saturn Vue crossover that had this system. And basically it was their foot in the door for a Honda style system. It went away. GM went through their bankruptcy. They've resuscitated it, and they're not talking about it as a hybrid specifically. They've come up with e-assist because they think that the mile per gallon number is more important in marketing this car.
Let's talk about that for a second, because this is a major issue with GM. They and it's not just GM, it's all automakers. They have this concept that nomenclature will somehow confuse buyers into think they're buying a more green vehicle. I mean, is it hybrid versus E? E means electricity, and therefore it's going to sit better with the buyer, Marty? Is that the case?
I think they're one of the few companies that sells both mild and now series hybrid vehicles. They think there's some confusion. They didn't even want to apply the hybrid label to the Volt. So there's a lot of communications issues when you sell something that's a plug-in hybrid versus a pure EV versus mild hybrid, parallel hybrid. I do agree that there's probably some distinction to be made for buyers, but ultimately on a Buick LaCrosse, they're probably right. Let's just say we're getting better fuel economy. And BMW kind of has the, what's their brand for all the fuel economy improvements? It's not emotion. It's basically stop-start technology and reduced friction in driveline components. They have a sub-brand for that as well.
Michael, synonymous names, is it? I mean, it's not for the engineers, is it? It's just for the marketing.
Yeah, it's got to be. I think one thing that I thought was interesting as well, I think that is the same chassis, pretty much everything from the Vauxhall Insignia. Is that right?
I think that's correct, yes.
Yeah, because I think it makes sense to them to put it into that design so it can map across to Europe quite quickly. But I think e-assist, I actually quite like the idea of e-assist. It seems less, keeps it out of that hybrid. My experience has been whenever you mention hybrid, people jump straight to Prius, and it's not that, and the Volt isn't that either.
Yeah. It's that hybrid thing, isn't it?
What's your gripe with it? Do you think it's just marketing speaking? It really doesn't say anything to customers?
I think, I think e-assist is, no, I like e-assist. I think that makes sense. It sort of gives the impression that there's some kind of electrical assist, and the assist part of it, lends itself to, it's not all electric. It's kind of helping out sort of thing. And, I know there's this, raging debate over, where the Volt lies in the electric and hybrid kind of timeline, if you will, from pure electric to traditional hybrid. And if the only concern I guess I have with e-assist is it's another description, it's another sector. Is a Prius an e-assist?
I didn't think. I thought it was Nikki. Nikki who had the issue with the e-assist nomenclature.
Well, I think let's put it like this: if it's a hybrid, I mean, I would like it just to be simplified. Let's put it like that: call it a hybrid. If it uses more than one mode of fuel and one of those is electric, I think that's fine to call it a hybrid. I think every time you try and bring in these extra names, it just confuses the buyer. It's a bit like the different names for start-stop technology. You know, Mercedes-Benz call the smart start-stop technology micro-hybrid drive. It's not got a hybrid engine, and yet they get away with calling it a micro-hybrid drive. Do you find that acceptable, or?
Well, I think that's the confusion that GM is trying to avoid here.
True.
And of all the brands, Buick has always been the one that's famous for Dynaride shocks and Wildcat steering. You know, just these really fanciful, emotional words about hardware. eAssist isn't that emotional, obviously, but it does bring up the question in a buyer's mind, well, why does this get better fuel economy? I think it's a worthwhile distinction.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll beg to differ on that one, I guess. But I can see your point, certainly. Let's go on to a story now about the Karma, which I know, Michael, you have been very eagerly following the Fisker Karma. It's a luxury plug-in hybrid. It's been delayed in production for forever, and it's finally entered production, hasn't it?
Yeah, it started production, and they're still talking about April for a shipping date, which I think is great news. Again, it's plugging the gap, in the luxury segment between the pure petrol-powered Jaguar and the pure electric-powered Model S. And I think it's going to find favor with a lot of people. It certainly looks absolutely stunning. I think there's going to be a lot of people excited to take delivery of that this coming month.
Marty, what's your opinion on the Karma? Are you a fan or not?
I'm definitely a fan of the way it looks. I am not as much a fan of the interior. There's some odd choices that don't exactly say $100,000. The angle I'm really interested in with Fisker is how they're going to bring production to the U.S. It just struck me as very coincidental that they found a deal to buy powertrains from GM, and then they also found a plant to buy from GM, and it happened to be in our vice president's congressional district. So that's a story that will probably elude me to get down to the brass tacks. But yeah, they are one of the placeholders, I think. We have Fisker and Tesla, and if pure electrics and plug-in electrics take off to some sizable degree, I can easily see those two brands being acquired by bigger car companies. And clearly there are some car companies that already have interest in both of them.
Fisker and Tesla. You see, I've got a bit of a theory with, not so much with Fisker, because I'm not that familiar with it, partly because Fisker has kept itself to itself. As you know, very few automotive journalists have had a seat behind that steering wheel. But with Tesla, I keep coming back to this concept that Tesla's forte, I think, in the future will lie with what Lotus in the UK did back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Not so much now, but back in its heyday. Lotus was known for breathing life into good vehicles and making good vehicles outstanding vehicles. You only have to look at some of those little European hot hatches that they touched, in inverted commas, and made them just completely different vehicles. And I wonder if Tesla's future, and possibly Fisker Karma's future, if they've got the technology behind it, lies in that modification, that licensing out, or that we're going to produce the bespoke sports edition of your regular electric vehicle.
I think certainly Tesla and Fisker have this unique spot in the automotive culture right now. People are paying attention to them only because they're electric car makers. The GM can't get this kind of attention. Toyota really even can't get this kind of attention for what they're working on in electric vehicles. It's all about Tesla Roadster, Tesla Model S. we have a little bit more inside information about Tesla simply because of where they are. They're near the High Gear Media corporate offices in Palo Alto, and you see all sorts of Fiat 500 Electras running around and smart cars, smart EDs. And it's pretty clear that there will be a large part of their business that is consulting on software. That is certainly in line with what Musk told me a couple of years ago at the Frankfurt show, that he considers them equal part car company and technology company. Again, there's probably a much larger car company that needs to buy that capacity off the shelf, whether it's Toyota or Daimler. But in the meantime, I'm sure they will have that Lotus-like aspect where they're consulting for a wide range of companies just getting into the EV market.
All right, let's move on to another story this week, which I was at an event on Monday night hosted by the Guardian newspaper and Renault in London, where we were discussing the future of electric vehicles in the UK. Now, the discussion itself was kind of pedestrian. It was kind of a very political discussion, talked about lots of the same old questions: infrastructure, environmental policy, whether electric cars are any good. You've heard it all before. But at one point in the discussion, the head of Renault electric vehicles in the UK was asked about Better Place. And his response shocked me. Now, Better Place, for those who don't know, is the battery swapping technology, or involves the battery swapping technology. Better Place isn't just battery swapping. It's a whole kind of methodology of looking after electric vehicles. But the guy from Renault said, at £1 million a pop, fast charging just isn't going to happen yet. Sorry, not fast charging. Battery swapping is not going to happen yet. It's just too expensive. I've been very surprised by the amount of people who have come back and said, oh, well, don't you see the future? Don't you see the vision? Marty, I know you've had a chance to have a look at this battery swap technology before, but there's no business model for it yet. And I think Renault is right to come clean and say there is no business model yet, not for at least another 10 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm. They have rightly chosen some very small, very compact, very densely populated areas to test if this will even work. Hawaii, Israel. There's just no way this is going to work in the U.S., where you can go 500 miles without seeing another person on a highway, much less being able to get to the next battery pack. Whether it works in the city of San Francisco, in the New York metro area, or in southern Florida, it's an entirely different question. Even there, it's still going to be so expensive to set up the swap stations and the volume of batteries they'll need. It doesn't look like it can scale.
No. Michael, Andy Heron of Renault UK, do you think he was speaking the truth, or do you think he was just a rogue mouth of Renault?
I think he was right on. I think he said the right thing as well, because I mean, you just have to look at a battery swap station to recognize how complex it is. The implementations in Japan. I'm sorry, blanked on the location, but I think the problem is people are in my mind anyway. People are associating battery swap with day-to-day driving, and I don't think that makes sense. I think battery swap is a brilliant application for taxis, for inner city delivery vehicles, for tight metropolitan areas, and not for the general public. I think that because the general public wants a wide variety of different cars, different sizes, different specifications. And, it's only fleet buyers who are going to sort of say, okay, give me, 1,000 of those vehicles over the next 10 years. And that's, I think, the only place, truthfully, that battery swap will work. And then it makes sense, for the New York City taxi fleet, a couple of battery swap stations, to power them, to me, makes perfect sense. So it's the application, I think, that's important about battery swap, not necessarily actually the cost.
I think you've got a very valid point there. I did a cost analysis of just how many fast charge stations you could get for the same cost, and I think even if you allow for tens of thousands of dollars per installation, you're still looking at multiple sort of 20, 30 stations. I was talking to someone from the Nissan Leaf Owners Club earlier on today, who was saying that they've heard on the grapevine that these fast charge stations in the UK are costing anything between £20,000 if they're a basic installation up to £100,000. And if that is the case, you can still get an awful lot of fast charge stations for that low cost. Not only that, but as Marty pointed out, it might work well in compact areas. But then, I mean, if you look at New York City, how much spare land can you think of in New York City, Marty, that would be available for something like this?
And that's just one of the many paradoxes that presents itself if you're trying to set up a battery swap network. Really, the problem makes fast charging installations look like a game of tic-tac-toe. In New York alone, where would you find a building large enough to warehouse the batteries that need to be constantly charged for some anticipated demand versus a fast charging station with 5, 10, even 20 hookups that might fit in the footprint of a gas station that's already been constructed?
Indeed. Let's move on to our final, I think we're probably going to have a final story before we go to the ad. This one comes from Volvo. They have just got back from a little trip to the Arctic, to the Arctic Circle, and they have been testing their C30 plug-in electric car. Now, I and several other journalists have had chance to drive this. It was a very impressive car. We drove it in regular conditions. It wasn't too cold. It handles well. It accelerates well. No knocks or bangs. Nothing to worry about. Admittedly, it's still a prototype, so it's not quite there yet. But in temperatures of minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, even with a fuel battery heating system that keeps the batteries warm, the range dropped to 50 miles. Now, this is a bit of a major concern. We have a situation where we've got a bioethanol fueled stroke electric fueled vehicle. And I say bioethanol because it has a little bioethanol tank that you can fill up to run a bioethanol heater, which is supposed to keep the batteries and the passenger compartment warm in extreme temperatures. And it being Volvo, it's based in Sweden, and it gets very cold in the winter. But the range was still dropped to 50 miles. Marty, that's just not going to fly, right?
I'm horrified by the idea of having to burn aquavit just to stay warm inside the car.
Right, I agree with you there.
It's not practical in their home market. So the bigger question is, I don't know that Volvo has any lockhold on the idea of being green any more so than Toyota or anybody else does. Can they really be the pioneers in this segment? And how much money does it take them to get from here to there to prove that they can build EVs? I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's a worthwhile exercise for every company. Companies like Toyota and GM may have the cash to be able to push technology and let others follow.
Marty, if we can you give us a little history lesson to show us the connection between Volvo and Ford? You can set me up for the next point I'm going to make.
Sure. Honestly, before the 60s, I think it was state enterprise. Ford bought Volvo in, I believe it was 2000 or 2001 for $6.6 billion. And that was after Volvo kind of dallied with Renault and Alliance talk in the early 80s. Ford sold Volvo year before last for $1.6 billion. And part of that was in kind, so in material goods. So right. They lost $5 for every $6 that they had spent.
But Volvo still have somehow managed to walk away from this deal with Ford, although they're now owned by a Chinese company, right?
Roma Geely.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting Chinese brands, for sure.
Well, Volvo managed to walk away from this Ford deal, but still have access to some of Ford technology. That's how I understand it.
They have to. There's just a natural wind out from contracts that they've signed 3 years ago for suppliers. And probably the last pieces you'll see will come around 2014, 2015.
Well, one of the questions that was kind of expressed while I was visiting their headquarters in Gothenburg by one of my fellow journalists there was, you've still got access to all the Ford vehicles, some of the Ford technology. Volvo have admitted that the only reason they made the C30 electric wasn't designed as an electric car. It is a conversion of an existing gasoline vehicle, because Volvo just doesn't have the money that Nissan has, that Renault has, that GM has. They can't build a brand new vehicle from scratch. They just don't have the technology. Even something like the Volvo V60 plug-in hybrid, which we saw last month in Geneva, is a conversion of an existing vehicle. It's not a ground-up design. And the question that was directed at them was, well, hang on, why don't you have access to these Ford parts? Doesn't that mean you can suddenly get the Focus platform, which is coming through the pipeline right now? And couldn't that be your electric vehicle? Because the new Ford Focus has been designed to take all the different drivetrain systems, right, Marty?
It has, but I'm sure there's a firewall there that Ford clearly didn't want Geely to have access to the new Focus technology. So the answer was no, I'm assuming?
It was a smile and no comment. So that was an interesting thing. Michael, you own a Tesla Roadster. Okay. Tesla Roadsters are known for their long range. They're also known for their ability to withstand cold weather. In fact, there's 3 Tesla Roadsters owned by the same family in the Arctic Circle, right?
In the Arctic Circle? I didn't know they had them that far. Okay, that's news to me.
Yeah.
That's...
sorry, and they don't seem to be suffering from this range problem. I mean, Tesla has liquid-cooled battery packs, and I was speaking to someone earlier on this week who postulated that the difference possibly between Volvo's battery pack and Tesla's battery pack is that apparently, I don't know, and I'm sure someone from the Tesla Motors Club or Tesla will correct me, but as I understand it, Tesla actually passes liquid cooling in between each of the battery cells.
Well, it's, between the battery, as the way I understand it, it's between the battery sheets. So the batteries are in these sheets that, go up to make the pack. And it's between that. And yes, there's definitely liquid flowing all around. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the C30 design, but the Tesla design has a heater built into it. So in the coldest of weathers, it'll always warm the batteries so that regardless of the temperature, hot or cold, you always know that your battery has been charged to the full capacity. So that's kind of sort of one piece of the puzzle out of the equation. The next thing is kind of the discharge in very, very cold weather. The packs themselves will self-heat when they're running. So I'm not sure, a huge amount is being lost just by the fact that, the pack is running in a cold temperature. Because, unless it's extreme, I suppose, but, above, reasonable sort of -20 and above sort of thing, the pack itself should, I think, deliver most of its power. The last and the biggest problem the Volvo probably faced was just driving with studded tires on snow. I mean, we all know how you feel a car slow down if you hit water or even just feels less responsive in sort of wet, soggy weather. I suspect that a huge portion of the power of that 50% that they lost was actually down to just driving through snow. What do you think? I
think actually you make a very valid point, one that I didn't necessarily think about today. And when I wrote the article about it, I did pick up on that. But I think you're right. I think that probably does have a big part to play in a reduction in range. I don't live in a country where studded tyres are mandatory, so I can't really comment about what reduction that gives in fuel economy. Marty, are you aware of kind of what kind of drop in economy we're likely to see with studded tyres?
No, I'm not. But obviously, any kind of friction you put into the system is going to cut down on range, and just you're probably going to lose more range just from being in a cold environment. Bottom line, but I can't imagine any. The whole reason that Nissan chose the markets that it did, it chose warm places with tight geographic population densities for a reason. So they could drop out the water cooling. So they have cheaper air-cooled batteries that gave the most range that they could put on slick tires. And there's the same kind of logic that goes into battery range that goes into fuel economy.
Right. Well, it does beg the question as to whether these vehicles are ever going to be ready for cold weather markets. And it's a disturbing and well, it's very disturbing to think that there seems to be a quickly developing list of vehicles that you don't want to take into kind of a line. Let's use the US as an example, kind of north of Minnesota, basically.
Definitely, but that kind of raises the whole argument in the US of energy diversity, that electric cars do make sense in some cases, but ethanol makes sense in the Midwest. Natural gas makes sense here in the Southeast, where we have a lot of it, and it could be to the point where you don't want to drive your California car to the East Coast because it simply won't make the trip.
And I think that's something we've forgotten. There was a point when we didn't expect our cars to do everything. And then sometime around about the last 10 years or so, we've developed this mentality that actually we do expect our cars to be able to do everything. And if they can't, then there is a major kind of mental block there. I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s, lots of cars couldn't handle winter weather. But nowadays, if you buy a car, you used to go out in the street. Michael, you were in the UK in the 80s, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that cold winters we had around sort of 87, where you'd go outside in the street in the morning and there'd be a whole line of guys trying to get their Morrises and their Austins and their Rovers and their Minis,
quality British automobiles
started, and they would be there with their can of Easy Start, and they'd be there with their trying to get
shaking their fist at the guy with the Datsun 120 who just drove off to work.
Exactly.
I remember that. Although with big holes in the side of his car because it rusted through. Still, it was running.
And there was a difference.
Those are the noises, Nikki. Those are the noises that British electric cars should make. We just had the little Jetsons whir. Obviously a Jaguar electric car or a Rolls-Royce Phantom should make that, I can't start yet. Yes. I can't start yet noise.
Yes. Right, let's move on to our ad break with our wonderful friends over at audiblepodcast.com. If you haven't heard of Audible, then why not? It is a great place to go if you are making a trip and you want to have something to listen to other than myself or another podcast on the way, or maybe you don't want to listen to music. In fact, it's proven that listening to loud, fast music makes you drive more aggressively. So just skip the music altogether and listen to an audiobook. And this week, I'm going to recommend a book. I've recommended it before, but it's one that we personally have been listening to in our family. My youngest and my eldest daughters have found it wonderful. It's called George's Secret Key to the Universe, and it's written by Lucy Hawking, who is, yes, the daughter of Stephen Hawking. And it's a fantastic little book. It's designed for children, and it kind of teaches children the basics of astronomy and astrophysics. Fantastic little book, and you can get that free. It's a short book. It's only 5 hours and 30 minutes, but you can get that free by going to www.audiblepodcast.com/Transport Evolved. And we thank them for their kind support of the show. Let's talk Nissan Leafs next. I guess this is a point where I come clean in the show and say that the Nissan Leaf has been delivered in the UK to its first couple of customers. Mark Goodyear is a radio disc jockey. He got the first one. I think, I can't remember the name of the second gentleman who got one. But in the last week, the last 4 days, I think we've seen about a dozen electric Leafs hit the road of the UK, which is a stark contrast to the US rollout. Obviously, in the US rollout, I think it was 3 Leafs in 4 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. Obviously, the UK being a smaller country, the rollouts are happening much more quickly. But there are some problems with the rollouts. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up here and say I am one of the affected people. I was told a couple of weeks ago that my car would be here, picking it up tomorrow, and it should have arrived at the dealer yesterday. It still hasn't arrived. I'm not the only one. There's lots of other folks who are expecting deliveries on Thursday and Friday this week, and also the beginning of next week. And their dealers don't know where the cars are, which is rather disturbing. Is it a repeat, Marty, of what's been going on in the States with people getting multiple delivery dates?
I think every person who's signed up for a Leaf, other than the first 3 press release events, I think everyone's gotten delays. And of course, the earthquake can't have helped, but that's not the first thing on everyone's minds. It is unfortunate that the press buildup came so far in advance of the actual ability to deliver cars en masse. And I think even a deeper issue is when people look at what kind of credits they can get and realize the tax implications. And then I think that's actually giving people more pause than simply waiting it out. We're used to waiting on iPads and iPhones. The premium consumer devices, Americans don't seem to have a problem with putting the money up and then sitting back for 6 months. But it does give you more time to reconsider, and then to hear reports of oddball events like people have it running out of range with supposedly 10 miles left on the clock. It doesn't help. I really think Nissan needs to capture those people as quickly as they can and turn a lot of them into evangelists. They don't have that opportunity right now.
We're talking to people at the moment who have VIN numbers and delivery dates. And then we've got people there's one guy in the chat room who was supposed to have his car on Tuesday and it should have arrived at the dealer last week and it didn't. But the strange thing is, going back to what you were saying about, obviously, what's been going on in Japan, it is a horrible tragedy, everything that's happened in Japan. But the cars involved in this latest delay would have left Japan weeks and weeks ago, before the event. And in fact, Nissan said there are shipments on their way. 350 cars landed in the UK at the beginning of this week. And I think some of the dealers have been so desperate to keep their customers happy that they've said, okay, well, the car will be here by this date. That's all we can tell you. And then Nissan have switched it at the last minute. There are tales of people who've got press ready, dealers who have, basically rolled the red carpet out for this car, who are going to have egg on their faces tomorrow when the press turns up and goes, so where's this new car you're giving to your customer? I think you're right with regard to iPads and iPods and consumer electronics. But even if you think about something like Apple, as a company, Apple will unveil a product and say it's coming next week or it's coming today. And they mean it. It's coming the next day or the next week. I think maybe the auto industry can learn from some of our gadget makers about how to do a better rollout. Do you agree, Michael?
Yes and no. I wonder if it's still possible to do that in the auto industry. I mean, stockpiling, a huge quantity of vehicles. Do you think they could do that? I mean, from a financial, cash flow perspective, would that work? I mean, that's actually probably a question for Marty, actually.
I can't imagine in a conventional business model that would work, but this is nothing by the book. This is the time to have the insurance policy. And if you're already into it for $6 billion around 3 different countries, 5 different plants, maybe this is the least that you have to worry about. I just worry that for them that there's a 6-month gap when they can really promise a steady stream of vehicles and people are waiting and order lists are not available for new people. And the Volt is available in a small but steady stream. I don't know what that does to the long-term prospects of this car.
Let's lay it down like this. In the UK, if you want to be a dealer for the Nissan Leaf, you had to have a fast charger. Now, that's not the case in the States, is it, Marty?
No, it's not. And when we talk about the delays, maybe some of it is getting the chargers installed in dealerships. Maybe they don't want to have cars delivered before people can charge at the showroom. And I know from talking to the installers for my charging station that process has had its hiccups also.
we'll come to charging in a second. But of course, I guess the point I'm trying to make in terms of the UK dealers certainly is that they've had to invest anything up to 150, 200,000 by the time they've paid for the installation of the fast charger, by the time they've paid to train their members of staff. Because you can bet that Nissan aren't going to pay to be trained for a new vehicle. They have probably ordered 1, 2, maybe 3. In fact, I know of one dealer that's ordered 4 or 5 demonstration vehicles, maybe a couple of cars to have spare as a courtesy vehicle, maybe to have for salespeople to drive. That's a lot of money to sink on a car that's just kind of still not turned up yet. And I think Nissan needs to make itself accountable, because at the moment it's not showing a very good face. End of rant, I think, on the Nissan Leaf. Although I do want to add a third problem, which is insurance for contract hires. The insurance companies in the UK don't want to insure the Leaf. That's my experience this week. Sorry, Marty, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I'm curious now. Why don't they want to put insurance down on an electric car specifically, or this one?
It's electric cars in general. I was at Tesla Motors earlier on this week, and I was speaking to one of their sales team there, and they were saying that part of the problem in the UK, the fear, some of the questions seem to be concern about batteries being stolen, because the batteries are expensive, they're valuable, they're part of the car. And what would happen if someone stole the batteries? So the insurance brokers don't like the risk, basically. They don't want to partake in the risk of insuring a vehicle that they've not got any comparables to. It's not like the hybrids, because the hybrids at least were part gasoline, part electric. These are purely electric vehicles that they are petrified of insuring, because the residual value calculations on the Leaf are ridiculous. You know, they're predicting a residual value after 3 years for a contract for a lease. They're saying the residual value after 3 years is 9,700 for a £30,000 car. That's insane, right, Marty?
I would think I understand actuarial tables would diminish the value, but you think about the reliability that's going to be baked into those vehicles. I would think over the long term, the residual values would be much higher. Here's a vehicle that could really last someone for 20 years with one change out of battery packs probably along the way. Have they even looked inside to see how the batteries are installed to allay this fear of them being stolen?
I don't know. I mean, this is something that I was speaking with Tesla guys about. So this was in relation to the Tesla. But the problem seems to be, if you want to get a personal insurance in the UK, you can have a personal insurance policy. We've got a quote this week for about £270. If you say that the car is a business car and it's on a contract lease, in other words, you don't own the car, your company is hiring the car from another company, your insurance brokers put the premiums up, wait for it, to £1,012 for exactly the same people driving it. So it's an increase of over £700 or £630 increase in premium just because you don't own the car. Your company is leasing it from another company. Now, there are incentives in the UK to encourage people to lease electric cars for their businesses and to buy electric cars for their businesses. On paper, that looks great until you try and get insurance for it. Now, if you're a big multinational corporation with a big fleet, say 3, 4, 500 vehicles, you're going to be able to insure the Leaf just fine. Because for you, £1,000 for the kudos of having a green vehicle is fine. If you are a small company, and as you know, the company I'm in, it was 2 people. If you are a small company and you want to take part in that, it's cost prohibitive. And so actually we've had to switch and go back to a personal purchase. We're now buying the car. It's not going to be bought through the company. And all of those incentives, you know, all the tax breaks that the government has laid out for people in businesses to buy an electric car are pointless, absolutely pointless, because you can't get the insurance. And I've spoken to several people who've had to do that now. And I know in the States that's not the problem. Michael, what do you think the problem is with insurance and electric vehicles?
I don't know. I'm still reeling from the idea of somebody stealing the battery. I mean, that's £900. Yeah. I mean, what are they going to do with it? I mean,
well, actually, I was talking to Tesla again, and they said that someone's car. There was a Tesla stolen this fairly recently. A Tesla Roadster was stolen, and the first question the insurance company asked was, "Are the batteries still in it?"
Wow, that's insane. I mean, I can't imagine what you'd do with the battery. I mean, yes, they're the same laptop cells that I suppose you could part it out, but...
I'll tell you what it is. It's the G-Whiz, okay? Little electric vehicles, neighborhood electric vehicles like the G-Whiz that started off as lead-acid batteries. Something like a G-Whiz, you're carrying around 8 lead-acid batteries that weigh... £60 a piece, okay? That's 60 pounds of lead. Well, maybe 50 pounds of lead,
something. Okay, yeah.
And to take the batteries out of a G-Whiz, if you've stolen I'm not saying, encouraging anyone to steal a car, but if someone did steal a G-Whiz and got it round the corner, let me think, there are 4 bolts to take the seat off, and once you've taken the seat out, it's 4 bolts to undo the front row of seats. Once you've lifted the seats out, which is a 2-person job, you just need one wrench. You can then lift out the plastic cover that holds the batteries on. You can then nip out the watering cable and disconnect the batteries. I've removed a set of batteries in a G-Whiz when helping a friend replace them in under an hour. And, you're talking a couple of £100 of lead acid. That's going to be worth quite a lot, scrap.
I get it. Okay,
But no one sat the insurance companies down and gone, you do realise that a Tesla battery pack is not made of lead, don't you?
Yeah. and the only place it's going to raise good money is to another Tesla owner, right? And it's never going to work because I'm sure they got serial numbers and part numbers and firmware editions and blah, 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 blah. It's never going to happen.
It's
crazy.
Well, you never know. AT&T and Ford this week have announced a partnership between the two companies. Ford have got this, obviously the Ford Sync, but now with the electric cars, they've got the additional added functionality of, I think it's My Ford Touch, so you can link your car with your cell phone and you can check on the battery state of charge, you can activate fast charging, you can activate pre-cooling and all of this from a distance. Now AT&T have signed a deal with Ford to provide the cellular data access that the Ford Focus Electric needs to communicate with the server, which you obviously then communicate with from your cell phone. But Marty, last time I checked, AT&T was not a popular cell phone company in the States and had major problems with coverage, both in New York City and in California.
They do. It's odd, though. It really is focused on those two areas. And the entire reason for acquiring T-Mobile, or at least the plan to acquire T-Mobile, is to address those concerns, get a lot more bandwidth, and push 4G technology. In my real world experience in the Southeast, we never have a problem with AT&T connections because it's the compilation of some legacy carriers, and we have really good signal strength here. But in the middle of San Francisco, it's difficult to place a phone call, make a text message, or send a picture message during either rush hour. So there's a problem in those two places. I'd be more concerned if I was Audi, which announced its deal with T-Mobile the day after the AT&T T-Mobile deal was announced.
My point,
it's a little PR. Oops.
Yeah. Sorry, Marty. My point, though, is that if you're marketing a vehicle, an electric vehicle with a limited range, I mean, Ford haven't yet given us a range for the Ford Focus, 2012 Ford Focus Electric, which I think is probably a smart move. But it's an electric vehicle, so you're not going to be living in Montana and driving one, are you? Let's be honest.
No, but the amount of I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The amount of data that these services are really using is fine to go over a non-3G signal. I don't think you'll ever run into a problem where you can't connect and find data within a reasonable distance. AT&T, their commercials here say they cover 97% of the country. So you'll have at least the basic cellular slow, but cellular connection to put in. I don't really think the AT&T name is going to deter anyone from buying a Focus Electric either. And to your first point, the backgrounder for the Focus Electric at this year's Detroit show, they all but confirmed that they're going for 100-mile driving range.
Yeah. Yeah. They just haven't confirmed it yet, which I think was a smart move.
No, it's not on paper yet anywhere. So
I think they said it's going to beat the Volt and it will be better than, I think is what they said, wasn't it?
Yeah, and very comparable to the Leaf because all the charging times they talk about are in direct comparison with the Leaf.
All right, let's move on. Do you happen to have, Michael, $845,000 in your back pocket?
Yes, I do, actually. Do you need change?
No, I want to buy a Porsche.
Oh, not a problem. You can get those for their 850. Hybrid one as well.
Yes.
It's kind of cool.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, how about that?
Tell us about it.
So it's, 718 horsepowers of hybrid Porsche 918. It's fantastic. I mean, well, I don't know who this is aimed at or why particularly it's hybrid, but maybe this is one of those cases of where you can sort of sell hybrid as being an advantage to the petrol head, because the car has a 500 horsepower V8. The electric motors add another 218. So, if you're taking it down to the track and you're wanting some performance, well, the batteries last. You've got 718 instead of the regular 500. Problem is, it's only got 14 miles of range in pure electric mode. So if you did take it down to the track, it's probably, a lap or two? And then, the regular ones are probably passing you after you've just spent, over $750,000 on a hybrid.
I suspect that if you have a vehicle like this, your range per mile is not going to be an issue. I think you nailed it on the head when you said it's all about the torque. It's all about that instant kick that you can't get from a gas engine. I mean, you can build a lightweight flywheel, you can build a dual clutch system, you can build gear pre-selectors, so you can lower you can have a straight cut gearbox, so you can just do everything you possibly can to minimize the transition time between gears. But you can't beat the smooth torque curve of an electric motor, right, Marty?
You can't. Isn't this a fantastic guilt-free solution for both sides? And honestly, the user case here is someone who has 100 multiple of $800,000 to spend on a car. And the two places it's going to be used are to drive to the Ivy and to drive down US 1 during Pebble Beach Concours weekend. That's about it. It really, I would venture to bet that more people will spend more time driving that car in only electric mode than some people will spend in their Volts in electric only mode.
That's an interesting postulation. So you think it's going to be the low speed, almost the low speed prestige Concours events that are going to make this car popular?
It's probably already sold out. They probably don't even have to bring an order sheet to Pebble Beach this year. This is the car for driving through West Hollywood, and that's about a 7-mile stretch on La Cienega and Sunset. So really, what does the range have to be any more than that? The car is just fabulous. Well, it's just everything they can do well.
Michael?
It's 14 miles, so there you go. It's perfect. 7 miles there, 7 miles back.
Absolutely. Let's go on now to gas tax for EVs. It's come back again. We're now looking at 3 states that are talking about gas taxes for EVs. It looks inevitable now. When I say gas tax, I don't actually mean a gas tax for EVs, because that would be absurd. I mean an EV tax to make up for the fact that that electric vehicles don't have to be taxed in the same way as gas cars. Is this the start of pay per mile, pay as you go motoring, Michael? Is this where we're heading?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. There's lots of talk at the moment about, pay per mile kind of motoring and car sharing and things like that. And I have very mixed feelings about car sharing, mainly because I participate in a car sharing scheme. I use Zip cars whenever I need 4 seats. Ironically, it's never range that is a problem with my EVs. It's actually the number of seats in the car. But the issue I have is they're usually not very well looked after. But I think the principle is kind of interesting, particularly for occasional uses. And I don't have a problem with the concept of pay per use. So, if you were to turn that to, some kind of tax around motoring, again, it's back to the old problem of where does the money go, and how do I feel about paying for a per mile rate that goes into the roads that I drive on? Well, I feel great about that. I really have no problems with it. But I have problems with paying for a tax that doesn't go to roads and just gets thrown into a giant pot and then not allocated to roads, which is where I want it to go. So show me a tax that goes on my roads directly, and I'll sign up. I'll donate even.
I don't really have anything else to add on that one, Marty.
No, that's perfectly summed up. I would just say that we have a traditionally short-sighted view of long-range decisions we have to make. If we're really content with putting out $7,500 tax credits for EVs and then subverting that with a tax for putting the car on the road, we really don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say on that one. All right, price gouging. Two price gouging stories quickly before we go. Number one, price gouging of the Volt has pushed people into buying instead of going electric, has driven people to buy Honda Insights instead. Now, Marty, do you have any insight into this? What's been going on here?
I assume that there are thousands of unsold Insights on the dealer lots in the U.S. at least, and you look at a $41,000 Volt that you'll have to wait on your tax credit if you decide to purchase it outright. And if dealers are inflating the cost, well, you could almost buy two Insights for that price.
And that's why they're doing it. And it's
sure.
It's simple. What are we paying now per gallon in the US, Marty?
Here in Georgia, I think we're just nudging $4 for regular unleaded.
Okay. We're nudging 9 now.
Right, that's reasonable, 9. Right?
Yeah, 8.5, 9. Oh, it's easy. We all earn so much. We don't pay 20% tax. We don't pay 20% purchase tax. We don't pay 20% base rate. No. That would be ludicrous, wouldn't it? Michael, price gouging on the Volt. Obviously, Chevrolet didn't go the same way with the Volt as it did with, as Nissan did with the Leaf, in an attempt to kind of make it a much more mainstream way of getting your vehicle. But now we've got price gouging.
I know, and I feel really bad about price gouging in this case. I think Nissan... so you buy a Nissan online, there's no debate about the price, there's no cuts, there's no trims or anything like that. But at least they protected themselves from gouging. And I think gouging right now is such a harmful thing.
Wait a second.
I really do.
Wait a second, Michael, because they haven't. There is now reports of Leaf price gouging.
No.
Yes. I'm just trying to find the story now. Leaf price gouging to bring up the cost to, I think, by about $5,000.
No, that's bad. That's a big chunk. I mean, I know Nissan are looking to increase the price of the Leaf. Is it next year or later this year?
Well, they've increased the price in the UK, and certainly when I spoke to Nissan North America, they said we're not planning on increasing the price yet, and then added, but any price rises we would do would come with the change of model year.
But I don't understand if Nissan, I don't know how deep Nissan's pockets are, but my thought would be is they have they have the one consumer electric only car, and they have an opportunity here to kickstart a whole industry and be on the leading edge of it. Surely they want to dip into their pockets and make sure that people are getting these things for even less than that it costs to make them to buy that market. I mean, that's, would be my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet there. Now, I don't know. I didn't think price gouging for Nissan Leaf dealers was legal, Marty. I thought they'd signed a deal saying they couldn't do it.
I'm sure someone will find a way around any contract. It's the U.S. Lawyers are a dime a dozen. But the fact that 90% of people are leasing the car, that seems to me to be a bigger concern. How do you get around a lease price that is widely advertised? MSRP is MSRP, suggested being the most important word in that. But the lease rate I thought was fairly fixed. So I haven't heard of any of the leaf gouging reports. But if you look at it, maybe there are still some very early adopters who want to be the next one on the list. And they look at the situation in Japan and they think, well, it really could be 6 months until I have my car.
Yeah. Well, it's a story that's broken it's apparently Santa Cruz in California, who is charging $5,000 over MSRP for their car. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I don't know how it affects lease customers, but I've signed up to purchase one outright, and I thought people would actually be postponing their purchases to make the tax situation work out in their favor. So the gouging surprises me.
One final story, which is going to shock us. We're going back to Volvo. This is just broken. I'm going to cover it very quickly. Apparently, according to Autoblog Green, Volvo is considering charging people, wait for it, $2,100, $2,100 for the C30 lease.
That can't be true.
It's 1,500 euros in Europe. Apparently, speaking at a media launch near Indianapolis, Indiana today, the president of Volvo Car Special Vehicles, Leonard Stelgand, said that while the final price for the car hasn't yet been set, Volvo will not sell the EV, but instead offer the car through a 3-year lease for about 1,500 euros per month.
Surely there's got to be a mistake. Even the Mini electric car, the leasing program for that was $700, $800.
I don't know. I don't think we can trust that. I mean, I think you're right. I think that's insane. That's apparently $76,000, as Autoblog Green puts it, to not buy an electric car, to have to give it back at the end. And on that note, we should finish. Thank you very much for joining us today, Marty. Where can people find out more about you?
At highgearmedia.com or any of our sites, including The Car Connection, Green Car Reports, and of course, All Cars Electric.
Thanks very much for the plug there, Marty. As you all know, I'm the lead writer for that particular site. So thanks very much for that, Marty. And have a great weekend. And I hope that your sunburn from your little vacation is not too bad.
No, it'll be fine. Thanks. It was great being here with you guys. Thank you.
Come back on again soon. Michael, where can you be found?
I can be found around the Twitters and on Tesla Motors Club. You can find me at Michael Thwaite or teslamotorsclub.com.
Or michaelthwaite.me, about.me.
Yeah, michaelthwaite.me.
No, about.me /Michael Thwaite. Now I'm confused.
Just Google Michael Thwaite, and I'm not the Australian football player. There you go.
Wow, another person with the same name. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. You can find me. I write daily over at allcarselectric.com. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at A Minor Journey. And if you want to find out all the other things I get up to, go to www.about.me /A Minor Journey. Now, we'll be back next week at the usual time of 8 p.m, but it won't be Greenwich Mean Time. It will be British summertime. We will be back at on the summertime. We get the summer at last. At least that's the theory. And we will be back at 8 p.m, which is midday if you're on the west coast of America. That's 12 p.m. It's 3 p.m. if you're on the east coast. And if you happen to be elsewhere in the world, you can sort it out. Don't forget to tweet us on Twitter. We are at Evolve Transport. And don't forget you can catch us on iTunes, blip.tv, YouTube, and lots of other places as well. And as always, folks, don't forget to drive green. See you soon. Take care. Bye.